I had a conversation just this week with somebody who said that at some level, it feels like the folks at Microsoft know that, and they are acknowledging it and trying to collapse their ecosystem right now of Copilot, because every Copilot product is technically a different product. What's inside of Excel versus what's inside of Outlook versus what's inside of Word versus what's on their website and what's on SharePoint. It's all different. I feel like that opening line for every one of them is this changes everything.
So I read an article.
You scrolled an article?
I mean, I read lots of articles. Man, that's bad, but yes. I mean, like, that's how I read articles now. I mean, it feels like the entire internet is BuzzFeed, but hey, I get, there's some Wall Street Journal articles that I'll dig into, but no. So I skimmed an article, and I didn't go behind the paywall completely, but I did find it in a few different places. But there was this Medium article out there that said, we really need to kind of fact check it, but 84% of people on the earth still haven't used large language models.
Yeah, that's easy math. Like, there's how many people, Zulu tribes in the middle of Africa are, my parents are from Bangladesh. That's 150 million people. How many of them have used AI?
Well, I mean, don't they have the opportunity? I mean, with smartphones, how many people have smartphones?
Yeah, like the one thing that Bangladesh has to their credit is this one Nobel Prize from the guy who invented the whole microfinance thing. So there's one woman who has a phone in a village who, creates a micro, economy for that village. So yeah, maybe there's one lady in a village of 400 people with a smartphone. I don't think she's on ChatGPT.
There's not smartphones all over the place? Yeah. Well, I'm feeling a little bit of shame. Like, I feel like you totally took me to school on my, I feel entitled, I guess is what I'm saying. I feel like I came across as very entitled just now, and I'm a jerk. I apologize. Yeah. Well, I don't even know the right thing and the wrong thing to say a lot of times. So, but you're probably right. I mean, like, there's just a lot of people out there that don't have access to it. So even if the number's off by half, that's still a ton of people.
Well, right. And I think like that, like the point, like the sensational side of the article versus kind of pivoting into all the people who should have access to AI. What is the percentage of those people who have not touched it or have not adopted it in any way? So today, right, we're talking a little bit about like fluency, right? The idea of like, are people even thinking about this in the terms of, I have to start building a sense of fluency with these tools, at the same level that if I hand somebody a phone, they have enough fluency to know there's an unlock and there are apps and there are, it's a touch screen. They're not going to go all, caveman on it and not understand what the thing is.
Yeah, I actually had a conversation with a CMO friend of mine and trying to get their team to increase their use of AI just generally. It's not going well. Then, you start talking to them and there are a lot of tools that they aren't aware of either. And I mentioned some of the ones that we talk about on here, like Manus, and which I think Manus is pretty well positioned for mid-market if they can get their head around security, because it's a true end-to-end kind of solution. I think it's a bit more expensive from what I can tell than some of the others, but it's definitely turnkey and it makes you smarter. But I think everybody's struggling with this because I keep going back to intellectual curiosity. I feel like that is the differentiator right now. I had a friend tell me, you know what? I like to think of it as intellectual grit because change is so rapid. I don't know if I fully buy. I think I like mine better, but I'm biased.
I think the curiosity comes first, right? Like, because the grit doesn't matter if you're not curious, right? If you're curious, you're going to get in there. the grit is sticking it out, right? I mean, and you and I have been, we started this episode, joking a little bit about like maybe an entitled worldview, but we are entitled to the point that you and I can spend time every day, every morning.
Well, yeah. I mean, every company should be digging into this, I feel like, a lot harder than they are. The tools, as we've talked about before, the tools are available right now that do really, really cool things. And there are still really, really large companies that don't have the fundamental infrastructure in place to build on top of it with these tools. That's what's baffling to me.
Well, I mean, that's a big piece of it is, do they have the infrastructure or do they have the curiosity, and do they have somebody who is sitting in the seat who has been given the hall pass, right, to kind of move it forward. And so I was talking to a colleague of mine earlier this morning. We were talking about how you cannot do these types of things in an healthcare setting sometimes, just because of the risk attached to it. And even though there are hundreds of really great use cases for application of AI tools, it's really hard to get the kind of the actuarial analysis to work out, or the risk analysis to work out. I was at an event last week, 2 weeks ago, and it was a group of CIOs, and there was a panel discussion. There was a gentleman there who was with a international automotive manufacturer, and he's an innovation officer there, and he was representing kind of their that seat of innovation and what they're trying to do. And he set up a story. It's a great story. It was fun for me to hear him tell this story because this was a client of mine 10 years ago, and the story actually goes back 10 years. And so the story he told was one of the fact that this automotive manufacturer has not done a great job with customer data from a structural lineage and definition of what a customer is. And
what's approximate market cap?
This is billions, but it's billions of dollars. They are an automotive manufacturer, right? Like, you drive past, they're the dealerships that they sell these cars, and so they're a big company. They're not just they're not a startup. They're one that's been around for 50 years. But what the use case that the fella brought up was the fact that they had duplicates in their customer data. And what's difficult to wrap your head around is sometimes you have to really look at customer data, and when you get to be this type of Fortune 100 type company, the definition of what a customer is hard, because for this, a car manufacturer, there's the customer who bought the car, the buyer. There's also the customer who financed the car, right? Because if your dad bought you the car, I mean, maybe the car's in your name. He's a co-signer. He did the financing.
Yeah. Co-signers. My first job out of college was collecting on car notes. So I'm well aware of the tangled web.
Somebody is the driver, which is an interesting component now, because the radio, you and I grew up with Pioneer and Alpine stereos, and right, it's not a stereo anymore. We call it the head unit in the car.
Yeah, you've got to take that out before you leave, because it'll get stolen. And I used to carry my CDs with me as well. Yeah, because the CDs would get stolen, the head unit would get stolen, and the CDs would get stolen if you were in the wrong place.
I'm just saying that in my my third generation 4Runner that I drive, one of the things I really wanted when I bought that was to put a nice stereo in it. I've got a Pioneer stereo. Faceplate comes off. It's so good. I don't want somebody to steal my stereo.
Man, you got to pop it off. Somebody's going to steal it.
But that head unit and stereo the driver is important because I'm selling to the driver products and services as you drive. And so that is a customer of the company as well. And then we could even go way down the rabbit hole over like broker relationships with leased cars and stuff. So who are all these people that are in their database? How many people are represented across multiple slices of their database because they are both a driver and an owner or a financer? And this is not a unique problem. And this problem actually has a solution that is pretty well recognized in the industry, which is who knows and maintains and has the most incentive to maintain customer data? It's financial institutions. And so the TransUnions and the Equifaxes of the world all have services that deduplicate data, and they're great at it. And they know they're great at it, and it's a premium service.
Yeah, it's expensive. And yeah, they are very good at it. And that actually helps collecting on car notes, believe it or not. You can find them. You can find them, and a lot of other people that know them. Over
a decade ago was decided that was too expensive, and they stopped using that service. Yeah, it was great. And so I knew about this years ago as a client, as a consultant, because we did some research into this, and over the course of several years, they had a lot of drift in their data and duplicates. At some level, people tried to solve it in different verticals within their company. They tried to ignore data that was associated with finance, or they tried to ignore data that was associated with the dealership. They didn't solve the core problem. And what this innovation officer brought up was the fact that he had to sit next to their chairman, CEO, in a conference room with his laptop and put his name into the database and then show him that there's 5 of him.
Yeah, that's got to be an uncomfortable conversation. I would love to understand how they even got to that point. Unfortunately, coming from the world of finance, it sounds like a finance-driven decision at some point.
Now we're at a place, and kind of the where this project ends, though, is that companies and the services like the Equifaxes and the TransUnions of the world are still valuable services, but rather than diving into a new contract with them, we are past the point of fuzzy matches with the databases. And with AI, we can really start looking not just at the data that's in the database, but how those entities have interacted with the customer or with the client over time. And we can let loose an army of AI agents to go dedupe or reclassify this data. And it's not the same type of investment, right? We're not getting our clients or our companies into multi-year locked-in investments with external partners. We can start building and solving, and maybe we get ourselves to the 80% mark and then have to make a decision about is the last 20% worth the squeeze?
You mentioned something earlier about, letting people go. That's why I feel like it's a little different, and maybe I'm wrong. I've argued both ways that AI and this whole, revolution is different than the industrial revolution. It's different than Web.0 and, but it feels like there is trying to say this the right way. It feels like there's an opportunity for small and mid-sized businesses to run a lot faster than big companies that don't have that are so right. Worried about risk, if that makes sense. So they're worried about, personal information. So PII, all of that stuff. What are we going to lose? Back to your hospital example. However, the opportunity cost feels so big for not letting everybody at your company kind of be entrepreneurs and really start to build things that solve real problems that they've been facing all the time.
Well, and I mean, you've sat in the seat where you've had to justify the investment for, letting people sit and be entrepreneurs and giving them the tool sets that they need, or dealing with the case of people running outside because the tool sets are free. And
yeah, I don't know if I did the best job laying out the story. Like, how do you lay out, because now, I mean, just this week, you're seeing more and more articles about all of these businesses, how do we budget for AI? How do we now, it is a line item on a P&L at this point,
Right.
because the usage is going through the roof.
So, I mean, how do you justify? I mean, what do you think? I mean, as we're talking to our peers here, and we're talking about budgeting for tools that not only have a per member per month type cost, like the way that we talk about it in healthcare at times, but also we have a token burn, credit utilization in the same way that we, like our AWS and Azure services have started, charging, have always charged based on transactions or cycles, processor cycles.
What he and I were talking about was, you've got all these big products out there, and I won't name names, but I've spent a lot of money in my time in multi-unit environments on facilities management software. So, you put in a work order, or somebody needs to come out, fix the HVAC, things like that. There is so much. So all these companies are now trying to retrofit their products with AI. I think that it's hard because there's so much feature bloat over time. Like, if you buy one of those solutions, I can't tell you the number of times I've approved a solution, and you probably as an IT professional has approved a solution, and then the company uses like 5% of the solution.
It's part of my regular shtick when I'm talking to these especially private equity companies that have bought a lot of solutions in the name of addressing problems, right? It's the nobody got fired for buying IBM, and so then they go out and buy CrowdStrike plus some other security tool, and they're using 5% of each, and there's overlap between the tools, and it's a big part.
Yeah, and so. Right. And that's because 3 people asked for a feature early on, and the CEO said, fast track it. That's our biggest client. Make it happen. So there's probably like 12 users on some of these big softwares that use every little bit of it to run their company. They went all in, but most of the other companies just want a work order system.
Yeah.
That's not hard to build in a weekend right now. So if you don't need a Maserati, or whatever, you pick the car, right? All you really need is a bicycle, and you can build that in your garage. It's like, let's just fix this one little problem. So that's kind of what he and I were talking about. And I think these smaller companies are better set up to do that, because they're just trying to solve these really discrete problems, and they're not having to untangle a lot of a big data mess.
Yeah. I think what I've noticed, and I've talked to other CIOs about, is 25 years ago, my job at this was a large company, international company. They were huge, and I worked for one division of theirs. And what we were doing was going around auditing whether anybody was using a Microsoft Access database, because that was the face of shadow IT 25 years ago. Because it was accessible. You could go to Barnes and Noble or maybe Walden Books back then, and go get a book and the Dummy's Guide to Microsoft Access, and a lot of people did, and they built systems. They were fragile. They were uncontrolled, right? Which was a big deal for this company that I worked for. They were ISO regulated, and so you had uncontrolled data out there. But today, it's a similar problem, but it's a lot easier to build, and you can secure it in some ways better. You can democratize access to it a lot better. And I think we're moving to a place where it's not just this one really smart person sitting in a cube in the corner of the office who's the only person who's smart enough to use the tool. Right? I mean, everybody had access to Microsoft Access. It just only 0.01% people knew what to do with it.
Yeah. Or took the time. It all goes back to being curious. If they were curious about the solution and they had a problem that they needed to solve, then they would spend their nights and weekends trying to figure that out. And then, they do become somewhat indispensable at that point. It's much harder to pull that person out, because they're the only one that knows how it works, or at least that's the fear. I think that's usually an blown fear in a lot of executives' minds. I think a lot of things can be switched out a lot easier, but that's a topic for another day.
That is. But, I mean, for those people who are doing that work, the access to the tool, which is what we've talked about, these tools and access to them and giving them the ability to run fast. And now AI is getting baked into every product. So earlier we were talking about one of my favorite topics that I do my hot take on all the time, Microsoft Copilot, just garbage. So now I had a conversation just this week with somebody who said that at some level, it feels like the folks at Microsoft know that, and they are acknowledging it and trying to collapse their ecosystem right now of Copilot, because every Copilot product is technically a different product. What's inside of Excel versus what's inside of Outlook versus what's inside of Word versus what's on their website and what's on SharePoint. It's all different, and different capabilities, different guardrails. And I think maybe it will get better. But while that it might, using these tools, you had an experience just in the last couple of weeks as we looked at how I think OpenAI and Claude both have got like a plugin with Excel.
Yeah. And honestly, my thoughts on some of this have changed a bit. And at least how I use it has changed a bit. So my first experience, and I posted about this on LinkedIn, was I was like, hey, I'm going to use this Claude Excel PowerPoint plugin, see what it does. I asked it maybe 3 questions and my tokens were gone because I'm just playing with Claude at this time. I'm a little bit further into it now, and this has only been a couple of weeks, but I started playing with it, and 3 questions in, 3 prompts in, I'm out of tokens, and I was like, this is ridiculous. I didn't even ask it to do much. Since then, they've upgraded and given double usage to everybody for a while, so that's been nice, but I'm still spending, like if I spend a lot of, let's say an hour and a half on a financial model for a client, or my own businesses, I might spend $10.
A finance professional, and when you say you're working in a model, and like, I mean, we're talking about multiple worksheets, like a complex entity. You're not just taking rows and columns in a spreadsheet and trying to like pivot table and build. Yeah.
No, I mean, like you talk to most finance folks, pivot tables are for the weak. We don't like them. I mean, I know that somebody's going to hate that I said that, but that is 100% true. I feel like accounting uses a lot of pivot tables. Sorry, accounting. But finance guys don't find enough flexibility with pivot tables. They lock you in. They're kind of kludgy. They can help, a little bit at the beginning of an analysis, but then you kind of pivot away from them. Yeah. I've got a ton of those. Comes with having kids. So what I started doing and where I started to see the most joy though from Claude, and then now I think I sent you an email, received an earlier release of this ChatGPT and Excel plugin. So I've used both now, played with them. I'd say Claude is still better. In my experience, it gets things right quicker and it goes a bit deeper, but that's why it burns your tokens. Seems to think harder. So trying to give a concrete example. So if you're working across multiple spreadsheets and you want to create a new way or a new view of your P&L or balance sheet, you can pretty easily tell Claude, use this other worksheet as a template, fonts, shading, all these different things, and recreate that. So use this P&L template and just get the essence of it.
Let me interject 1 second. So you said
do
get the
that
essence
over
of
here.
it. I mean, like that is a very that's a squishy kind of a, like, can it really do that? I mean, can it tell that that's a good one? Okay.
No.
Okay.
No. That's where I was heading. So like in my head, yeah, Don't cut me off. No, people tell me I'm long-winded all the time. This is fine. So I want the essence of it. So what I'm doing is I'm going into Claude and using like plan mode, maybe in Claude code, because it's a little bit, less, token usage, or I'm just using Claude, or sometimes I use ChatGPT. Wherever I have the most context about the project, I'll dive in there, and then I'll tell the large language model, hey, I'm using an AI agent. Here's what I want to do, and I need it to use as little tokens as possible. Give me the exact prompt for Claude in Excel. I usually call it AI agent because I don't know which one I'm going to use, Claude or ChatGPT. And then I take that prompt, which is, I might say essence over here, and then say something in my prompt, like ask me follow-up questions if you need more clarification. And then I'll go through what I meant by essence was, I want the shading to be like this. I want font 10.5. I want et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the formulas need to be designed a certain way.
So here, we titled our kind of our discussion today kind of to talk around AI fluency. Fluency is what you're talking about here. It's the fact that you have gone past this is a magic toolbox and I'm just going to ask it to go, I'm going to rub the genie in the lamp and tell it to do stuff. And now we're talking about some very specific, I am trying to control token utilization, partially because of cost. But also, I think both of us have seen from a fluency perspective, given fewer guardrails, it's not just that the AI is going to go off and burn a lot of tokens. It's going to go investigate and try to figure things out that I think you've talked about this. It goes too deep, right? It gets lost in its own head in a way.
Yeah. Like if I went in and I said something like I just told you, if I just chatted to it like a person, and said, hey, I need you to replicate the basic look and feel of this spreadsheet and do it over here, but it's going to be totally different data. It's the balance sheet instead of the P&L or statement of cash flows. Go. It will start going, all right, first, let me read the entire spreadsheet. Let me read all of the workbook to make sure I understand how everything fits together. And you will just sit there for 5 minutes while it churns, and then it'll come back and say, all right, I get it now. And then it might not get it. So if I say, I want you to build a sheet named this, and I want you to do it with these, like everything I was saying earlier, fonts, etc., and I want you to tie it out to this other worksheet on this specific row, that is what gets you the best results when you're working in a model that is already built. If you're starting from scratch, then maybe let it create, let your creative juices flow. But if you're working in a model as an analyst right now at a company, I would say you want to plan and prompt for that agent in some other tool.
Well, and I think that's a fluency component we've talked about on multiple levels, is these there's a danger, I think, that we've both seen of going kind of all in on one stack, because it's almost like putting all your eggs in. If you just had one smart person that you hired, right? And you're not looking at any kind of alternative point of view from or pushing back a little bit, but letting a couple of these tools work together by pushing each other's work against each other.
Yeah, 100%. I think we're circling something a little bit here, and this is how I've been explaining it to people is we are still coding. The language is just English. So we're not writing in Python, we're not writing in Java or C#, whatever, right? We're not doing all those things. We're writing in English, but fundamentally we're still telling a computer what we want it to do. The computer is just smarter about it. So you've got to speak really well to the computer and give it exactly what you want it to do, and you're going to get a better output. And I would say, well, leverage the computer, the cheapest tool you have to plan and develop, and then move over to the heavier hitters once you have that plan completely dialed in and you have a prompt so specific that it's going to accomplish your goal in one shot.
And so what we're saying is that a little bit, we're not even saying a lot, a little bit of thoughtfulness is the lesson in this specific area of fluency and using these tools, where if you're scrolling on TikTok or on YouTube and you're hearing these young guys and gals saying, like, this changes everything, and this is, like Claude destroyed Excel, and the example is a one-shot type of a prompt, right? And the context that they're working in is very different than the complexity of these tools and models that you've built, right? I mean, you're a hotkey jockey, fingers on keyboard.
Yeah, and I'm not nearly as good as the guys that are out there now. I mean, I haven't been, my skills are rustier because I've been leading people and been less in Excel. But yeah, this is helping me get back into Excel, though, because I can now tell it like I would an analyst, but I have to be more specific than I would be with an analyst. I could tell one of my best guys, hey, give me the essence of this sheet. Literally, I would be able to say to a human person, give me the essence of this sheet. They all need to like be matchy. What our structure usually looks like. Thanks. Get it to me by Thursday. Here it is. I've got a high school student who is really, really good, knows zero about business or modeling. And I have to say, go to cell A26, do this, color it this way, and you can speed that really detailed process up by using a large language model to help you develop that.
Right. So, I mean, the part that's not the changing part is that it's not a debate. What you say to it and how you say it and the prompt, and we're not talking about prompt engineering. We're talking about context for the agent. This is not a debate on which product does it better. Is Claude better than ChatGPT? This is about the fact that as you and I hit these real world walls, as you're taking real P&L samples and you're helping clients and new clients out, that you have to get into the weeds with talking to it in a way that's structured. You're not writing Python code. You're not having to talk to it dumb. You're not talking in a way. I feel like I talked to another person the other day who was saying like, well, you have to treat it like a child. And I'm like, well, now you've messed up too, right? Because that's not the point either, right? We're treating it like someone who just doesn't have context.
Yeah, I agree. But the more, in some of these tools, the more context you give it, but also, I don't know, it's not just context, it's explicit instructions. In some of these like programming environments and, when you're coding, the more specific, you taught me the other night, you were like, no, Jim, don't say that. You need to, I know what you're trying to do, but you need to use the exact word that's going to get you a better result. And that's what I'm saying here. But you could, I guess the point is like, you can speed that process up too by talking with a cheaper tool. You could even download a local model and do your planning for free if you wanted, and, feed it the spreadsheet, let it learn the spreadsheet, give it explicit instructions, but plan. Take the 15 to 20 minutes to plan the one prompt, and then you're going to get an outcome. Now you really did only spend 45 minutes on something that's going to take 5 hours. So that's my point on that.
I think we like that horse. Did
we
dead.
beat a horse on that?
We've talked about fluency in the context of, right tool at the right time. Fluency in the fact that as we use these embedded tools, we have to give it a certain brand of explicit instruction, but we can't downplay that explicit instruction set is. It's contextual to what you're doing. It's explicit to the tool that you're working in, because we can't yet get to the point. We're close maybe, but we can't do the, bring me the essence of this document.
You can do it. It's just going to take you a whole lot more usage, and it's going to keep going. Yeah, here, try this. And you're going to be like, oh. And then you're going to continue to give it more and more explicit answers, but you'll have burned through 20,000, 40,000 tokens.
Yeah. I think, one thing maybe we'll land the plane today, kind of going from fluency to talking, kind of landing the fluency plane around one of our favorite guys. You probably hear us talk about Nate B. Jones on our podcast, because that guy is deep. He is deep in on all things AI related, and maybe he will like us one day and come do a 3-headed monster podcast with us. That would be amazing.
I would love it, but it basically would be me learning from him. Like, yes, what you said, Nate. Nope, no notes, no further questions.
No notes. He talks a lot. He uses the phrase that having taste, and that this is a differentiator, and maybe one of the differentiators that we're going to be seeing as emergent in the use of AI, being fluent with the use of AI, being able to use it effectively, both at the enterprise level and at the personal level, is taste. And one of the pieces of it is the angle of, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Choose what you're going to invest your time, money, and experience into, because for some of us, we have a very ADHD approach to life, and we bounce around a lot, and it gets us in trouble. But this idea of taste, though, plays out in the fact that we know what good looks like. We have worked with consultants from, giant, the McKinseys and Alvarez's of the world. We've worked with independent folks. We know. I think the two of us are pretty self-aware, and we know when we've worked on something and we phoned it in, and we know when we're proud of the work that we've done. And I feel like we do have good taste, and part of working with these products is training them in a way to understand taste. And so one of the things that maybe we've talked a little bit about, and we've circled it a little bit, is that when we pit these tools against each other to try to refine our prompting or our instructions, one of the things both of us have found is that we are telling the system, no, I don't like that. I need it to look like this, right? We are, right? And so this idea of fluency is partially in being able to be the adult in this relationship between you and a AI tool, and pushing back to push it towards good taste. And there are accelerants that we've talked about on previous podcasts about having RAG systems and having vector-based databases that can pull information together or pull examples together. That those things will definitely enhance the ability for the tools to give us answers that have good taste. And at the same time, we have to push back enough that the final product that we generate out of these tools, whether it's a memo that we're sending to a client, whether it's a spreadsheet, that it's got some level of taste that is not just good taste, but is reflective of the work that both of us know that we're capable of doing.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think AI guilt is probably going to be a thing if it already isn't. But just feeling like you can get things done so quickly. However, like I said, there's a lot of planning that you're not going to get the same. This goes back to what we always talk about. I'll summarize it this way: 25 years of experience plus AI. Awesome. You can ask the right questions. You can get to the essence of things a lot quicker than if you don't. I mean, you're going to prompt, naturally, you will prompt better in your discipline than somebody who doesn't have any experience in your discipline. You're going to be better at IT prompting. I'm going to be better at finance prompting. That's just the way it is, because you can ask better questions. That's where we are, at least in the evolution of these products right now.
These products are, we've talked about, it's the limitless pill. It's helping us move faster. And the danger that maybe we're closing today's session on is the fact that whether we want to call it a retained humanness, whether we want to call it a retained quality of output, as people talk about AI slop and, just generated content that's out there, that in between that, where people are just generating content for the sake of content, and in between that and people just not using these tools out of some kind of, self flagellation of I'm just not going to use the tools. I'm just going to, like a serial killer, open up Notepad and type it all in Courier font. In the between there is the application of good taste, the application of the knowledge and experience that we have to generate product that is the equivalent of our summed humanity and our experience. But we're going to be doing it probably a lot faster, at a faster rate, and we're going to be able to be more accurate because we have been able to spend more time investing into the actual analysis rather than the where, should I use a semicolon or, an Oxford comma here?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think this is a good, I think this is a good place to land. And in the future, I think it might be smart to explore skills and how you can get yourself, your knowledge, your abilities into skills.
That is.
Which is, that's a new file extension now, right? So you can get these skills built that, you're basically cloning yourself inside of
also, as we talked about fluency this time,
box.
Maybe this next time we get together, we'll be talking about the ability to clone yourself or create the ability to have taste, to have
yeah. Oh, we're going to talk about the curation of personal taste.
Oh, this is
this is what I do. That's why I'm on
there.
The
You go.
here.
All right. Well, I guess for our friends who've been listening and who stuck with us this far into a conversation, and is that I'm Veer
and I'm Jim. And we are the functional executives on most days. And we would love for you to subscribe and keep listening if you like this content. And also, feel free to drop us a line.
All right. And we'll come around next time to talk about the curation of taste. You're so much better at wordsmithing.
I said that I'm not better with words, but I said the curation of personal taste.
We'll see everybody the next time around.